Hello Wargamers and welcome to another painting guide from Let's Get Critical. In this painting guide I'll be taking on the Ratlings kill team that came with the Brutal Cunning box set. The first colour I'm using is Rhinox Hide. I'm using a very old brush which I got from the modelling shop. It's got really big bristles and I use this for priming terrain and for priming models as well. It's so much simpler to use a big brush than it is to use spray paint, and in the long run it's actually cheaper as well. I like using the big brush. You want to make sure you've got just some on the paint, and then you want to just stick it in there and keep the paint moving all the time and just keep moving it around. Don't have to worry about being too careful with it because it's a very cheap brush, only cost a few pounds, and I do this all the time. There's the finished product there. It's so much simpler than spraying, and it's super. This took about 2 minutes and the model is primed and ready to paint. For the painting I want to start with some camo. I'm using a very worn and very old medium layer brush from Citadel, and what I'll be doing with this brush is to start stippling some green camouflage colours onto some areas of the miniature. So the first colour I'm using is called Death Corpse Drab, and what you do is you get some paint on the brush, you work it into those bristles, and then you start dabbing it off so there isn't too much on there, and then you very gently start applying it to the model. As you can see here in the demonstration, I'm just going to very gently start stippling away. You want to try and concentrate on the areas which you want green, so things like the clothing, the beret. I'm then going to move on to the backpack and to the holster that the weapon's in. It doesn't matter too much if you get it on the hands or the face or other areas you didn't want green, because you can always paint over them. But you want to be really careful, and you want to use as little paint as possible. Just really dab the colours on and start to build up that colour. There's the first colour there. You can start to see the dark green coming through already. The next colour I'll be using is called Death World Forest. It's more of a greeny brown. Using the same brush as before and using the same stippling technique, just very gently start dabbing the new colour over the other colours you've used so far. And as you can probably see already, it's starting to come through and look a lot more like a camouflage pattern that you'd actually see on a soldier. Very gentle, and just take your time. It's always best to add a small amount of paint and then a bit more than it adds to add a lot, because you can't undo adding too much paint. And I'm happy with that there. That's had 2 colours so far. I'll just quickly show you before I go on to the final colour I use. For the final green, it's a colour called Ogren Camo. It's a very light green, and as you can see, it's the same brush, using the same effect, and I'm just very gently stippling and building up that camo. You can see lots of the brown underneath, you can see the other greens as well, and it's a very simple and very effective way to put a pattern onto the miniatures. It's much simpler than using a brush like the Psycho or the Insane Detail and actually painting each one of those, patterns individually. Just use an old worn brush and just start stippling away. And there's the final one, the final showcase of the camo. I think it looks great. I use it all the time, and I'd highly recommend giving it a go. Super quick and super effective. I've now switched brushes to the Army Painter Wargamer Kalinsky Masterclass. It's got a really nice point, and it's a really nice bristle, very soft, very easy to work with. At the end of the video, when you see the whole kill team, you'll see that all of the weapons have been done Baneblade Brown, and that's the colour I'm using now. Because this weapon's in the holster, the camouflage holster that's attached to the backpack, I decided, you know, to show you me painting it anyway, but there's not much to see, so a very, very quick coat of Baneblade Brown was all it took. This is me applying the first coat. After this, when it dried, I did give it a second coat, you know, to bring out the colours, because it was a little bit opaque, and it did take 2 coats to get a nice light brown colour going. After that, with the same brush, the Kalinsky Masterclass, I decided to use some lead belcher. I've done the same on all the other weapons, all the other sniper rifles in the Ratlings kill team, and I just picked out a few more details. Here you can see, you know, there is a few very, very fine lines. The Masterclass brush is good for that. And then I moved on to the handle. And they're the only parts of the weapon that can be seen, so I had to leave it there and then carry on painting the rest. And there we go. Just helps to identify that weapon from the rest of the backpack and the rest of the camouflage colours. I'm now moving on to the skin. So I used a different palette now. You can probably see I'm using the Citadel Servo Skull palette. I'm using one of their indent pools, and I've used Kevlar flesh and some water to make quite a runny liquid. And I'm using this to paint the hands. Again, I did 2 coats of this, 2 thin coats, but in this part you'll see me applying 1 coat. And just very, very gently, just applying, you know, the first layer of the flesh paint. These models are small. They're about the size of grots. You know, they're not very big, and you have to be very, very careful. But if you're patient and you can under control, you can get it all done quite quickly. It's always best to use thin down paints when doing this, because it really does flow better. If you go straight from the pot, the paint can quite often be quite thick. And I'd say that the Kalinsky Masterclass was about as large a brush as I could possibly. I do have a Psycho from the Army Painter, and I do have an Insane Detail brush, and possibly I could have used those, but I carried on. That's the finished article there. That's had 2 coats of the Kislev flesh on the face, the hands and the feet. It's already starting to look a bit more like a little human, like an abhuman as they're called. Next, I've gone on to a colour called Deathclaw Brown, and I'm using it for the hair and the beards. I'm using the Kalinsky Masterclass brush. I'm using the same servo palette, and I've done the same thing. I've applied some of the paint in there, and then I've obviously just applied drops and drops of water till it's a nice thin consistency, and then very, very gently gone over the areas I want to paint, waited for it to dry, and then just given it another coat. I've used the same hair colour for the whole kill team. For some reason I think they look great with their ginger beards. And there's the final piece. Next, I've decided to go on to the shading. I'm using a different brush now. I'm using the Army Painter Regiment brush. I have 2 of them. One of them is quite new, so the point and the tip on there is still very, very, very good. This, as you can probably see, is quite a worn one, which I only really use for shading. The shade color I'm using is the Athonian Camo shade, and as you can see, I'm just picking out all of the camo details. I'm concentrating on the clothing and the beret, I'm concentrating on the backpack and the holster, and I'm just giving it a nice liberal coat of this Athonian Camo shade. It's a lush green colour, and I really think it just really highlights and just makes the camouflage pattern pop. Very, very simple, very effective, like I've said, and it really is, I think, the easiest way to do camo. I've done it lots and lots of times, and there's the final product. final finished miniature with his green camo clothing. Looks very army. The next shade I'm using the same old Army Painter Regiment brush, is Ratlings Flesh Shade, and I'm going over the skin and the hair that I painted earlier. The good thing about this shade is it hides some of the imperfections you did when you were painting, and it starts to really bring a more neater look to that model, and it starts to look a bit more realistic as well, because the shade colour, it seeps into the recesses and starts to add, it stops looking like a flat colour and starts to look a bit more like skin. I would probably recommend maybe using a smaller brush as well, but this is the smallest brush I had to hand that, I do want to probably buy another small brush. I'm thinking of buying a much smaller one, but for now I just had to persevere and very gently just dabbing on the shade, and there's the final model. Had all the detail work and shades applied. Next, I'm moving on to the base, and I'm using the texture spreader from the Games Workshop. I saw that obviously there's a lovely metallic piece with his foots on, and I did want to paint it lead belcher and apply some detail, but I thought, it's so much quicker if I just cover the whole base. The texture paint I'm using is called the Agrellum Badland. It's from Citadel, and I'm just using the texture spreader to go over it and apply and cover the base. Now, I would recommend using a brush, but I didn't have a brush to hand that was... The texture spreader is very difficult to cover the base, and it really took a lot of time, and I had to be very careful. If you do have a very old brush to hand, then I would recommend using those, but be very careful because the texture paints will ruin the bristles on them very quickly indeed. That's why I continue to use the texture spreader. It did take, quite a lot of messing around, but I got there in the end, and that's the final product there. We've just got to apply some rocks to the base, and it is literally more or less done. All done within a few hours, and that included this video as well. I was chuffed to bits. For the rocks, I have some of the Army Painter basing rocks. You can find them online or in their basing set, and I just found a couple of them which I like the size of, and then just stuck them on with some super glue. Really simple process. I use some tweezers because obviously I don't want to get the super glue on my fingers. I've got a massive habit of sticking my fingers together, and since I bought these tweezers I've never looked back. So you just want to get some glue on there, stick it down. I like to leave it for about 20 seconds usually, and then it's done. And then I did the same process again using a smaller piece for the back. One thing I will say about this is when the paint dries it leaves a white residue, and you need to go over it again with the texture paint just to hide it. But if you are using a brush, make sure that the super glue is bone dry, or it will go into the bristles and ruin the brush. I've done that several times before. But that's the final product there. That's the final miniature. As you'll see in just a few moments, I'm going to show you an outro. I'm going to show you a presentation, a showcase of the kill team and some of the terrain I've painted. And that's it. Thank you for watching. My name's Gar, and thank you for subscribing to Let's Get Critical. Bye bye.